So let's talk about allyship because I know you're really deeply passionate about allyship. Can you
Yeah.
talk to us about what does allyship look like in the workplace for persons who live with disabilities? And can you give us some specific examples to help us?
Yeah, and allyship is a very interesting topic. There's been a lot of talk about allyship. I really think that coming out of COVID, really, and what our neighbor to the south have experienced, and there's been more talk about allyship. And of course, we recognize that allyship is to be an ally is a verb, it's not a label that you wear for one particular week out of the year or 1 month and say, oh, I'm an ally. Okay, great. What do you do? What does that actually mean? And so, in terms of the workplace, the three actions that I try to do, and it kind of crosses over for my personal learning and my professional action. And so, because if I know more personally, that's going to transcend into professional, how I engage with colleagues and in the workplace. So, the first thing I do is I diversify my media feed. So, my social media feed, rather, because if you are only following people who look exactly like you're not going to learn anything. So I intentionally follow influencers who have different disabilities from my own intersectional disabilities so that I am learning every day and I'm challenged to learn more. And then it also allows me because the more layers of oppression that you have, the more difficult um, the systemic barriers are going to be for you. So, for example, I am a white woman who lives with profound hearing loss that is not readily visible until I start speaking or I'm having trouble hearing what is being said. But I have privilege that someone who is a Black woman who uses a wheelchair, so visible by skin, visible by mobility device, I have more privilege. So whenever I see a post by someone with an intersectionality that is more visible than my own, I make sure that I show up and I amplify their voices by reposting, sharing, commenting, because it's important for all of us to use whatever privileges we have to amplify those who do not. And so that's one thing I do. And the word privilege, and Ritu, I know you do a lot of work in this area. Privilege does not mean your life is easy. Far from it. And it doesn't mean you're rich or anything like that. It just means that based on the color of your skin or your abilities, you never have to think about discrimination in those areas or bullying as a result. But you can't go through life wearing blinders like the horses do, and where all they see is straight in front of them, but all of the stuff is going on behind them. You need to take the blinders off and recognize that while you're not personally impacted, a lot of people are experiencing discrimination that is very different from what you may experience, but it's still happening. And so we need to be mindful of what's going on around us. And as I said to Ritu earlier, when you shared your story about interacting with me, do not be afraid to make mistakes and learn, apologize, and do better. And this is particularly in the workplace, where especially when we've transformed what the workplace looked like. We may have more online meetings. There are different environments that we may meet before than we did. And so our ways of engagement may be very different than they were pre-COVID. So, for example, for me, you have to make sure if you're having a Zoom call, do you have the auto-generated captioning enabled? Maybe that wasn't something you need to worry about when we were face to face in a meeting room, but it is something that is of concern when we're doing a Zoom call. So recognize that COVID absolutely has highlighted many inequities, but it's also made something better. And so don't lose the lessons from COVID, and just try to always be mindful. And those ways of taking action, even though they're rooted in your personal learning, they do translate and they're transferable.